February 27th. I look at the calendar to make sure. And we appreciate our sponsors, Triple X on the Hill, but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. And then, of course, State Farm agent Trent Johnson at trentismyagent.com. We are grateful for those two folks for long-term sponsors to this show. We also want to thank the good folks at WLFI, of course, TJ Horn, Chris Collar, Steve Clark, for helping make this happen. We appreciate the folks at WLFI, News Channel 18, and all that they do for us. So a special show today. We'll have 3 segments with Pete Rush. And if you know the name Rush Metal, if you're from the Lafayette area, you know the Rush family. Loretta Rush is a key in the state judiciary. And, of course, Pete, a long-time sports attorney and sports law expert. They will share some of the insights, not only to things about Oscar Cluff's eligibility on down to how we're going to navigate this wonderful world of college athletics moving on. So we'll bring Pete to you right away, and we thank you for taking the time to join us. Well, we are welcomed by an esteemed guest, a long time. We've known each other for a long time because Pete Rush was a dynamic, super basketball player for Central Catholic. I'm starting. I got to butter you up this way. That you were far better. The problem was I never played against you much on the court because I sat on the bench and you played, obviously, for the Knights in my days at West Side. But we've known each other for a long time, and when we reconnected a couple weeks ago, this went on for hours, so that part's fun. But Pete's day job is a significant one and pertains to the world of not only Purdue sports but college athletics. What world we're living in. Pete, a distinguished sports law attorney and a Notre Dame undergrad, Duke graduate, but has, like a lot of Lafayette folks, has stayed very in touch. I think he can call himself a Purdue fan too. So from that standpoint, but Pete, the highlight of your media career, but welcome to Golden Black Live and Saturday simulcast.
I'm actually thrilled to be here. Thank you, Alan. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, let's get into it. It has come up with Oscar Cluff being one in the wonderful world of eligibility and whether that means anything anymore in today's college sports world. And Cluff's situation is interesting because he obviously it's possible that he could have another year of eligibility and play another year because of his role in junior college. But give us the Cliff Notes version of that and why that is becoming or has been, from Diego Pavia on down, Vanderbilt quarterback, a hot topic in the world of eligibility in college sports.
Yeah, tracing back to the beginning, the NCAA has rules. They have rules, and they're trying to enforce them. And the rules are a contract. They are a contract between and among all the institutions. With regard to playing, they have what's known as the 5-year rule, which is you have 5 years to play for, with a redshirt year included in there. Then you have what they call the JUCO rule. Oscar's subject to the JUCO rule. The JUCO rule generally says if you play 2 years in JUCO, it counts towards the 5-year clock. So Oscar's dilemma is, it's probably too late now, but unless he can throw in an injury year, his clock is expired.
Yeah.
The reason this is a problem is a fundamental problem for the NCAA in that their authority comes from a contract, and it happens to be a contract between and among competitors. Yeah. So generally in the United States, when competitors get together to agree to control somebody else, whether it's the price of chicken, the price of hamburgers, sensational radio personalities like yourself, it's a problem. Yeah. It's a problem, and it's illegal. It's a Sherman antitrust violation. So within the last week, Oscar's gotten some bad news and some very good news. What do I mean by that? There was a ruling out of the Tennessee State federal court last week denying a football player another year of eligibility, failing to follow up on Pavia's case. However, yesterday, there was a case that is a groundbreaker for Oscar, and that's the Blythe decision out of Nevada. So in the Blythe case, the federal court looked at it and came to a completely different conclusion. Now, why? Why is this? The NCAA's comment was, this is just chaos. Cats and dogs are living together. We've got to stop this. Well, the problem is they can't.
Yeah.
The problem is they've got an illegal contract and they can't enforce it. And that's pretty much what the Blythe decision said. So it said all these rules are violations of what's called the Sherman Act.
Yeah.
The reason the Tennessee case came out the other way is the guy pleaded only the Tennessee Act. The Sherman Act is the federal act controlling the United States. So Oscar's got a very good decision there. And quite frankly, I think the right decision. So I'll stop there. Is that?
Well, yeah, that makes sense. But why in Tennessee? Why would they only why would they not take the federal approach there? What was that, just a misstep, or was that the thinking that they were going to have success?
Yeah, I wouldn't have done it. I would have pleaded the Sherman Act because the Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court, has said, this is almost the concurring opinion from Justice Kavanaugh was essentially, you guys are a walking antitrust violation, and whatever rules you're making, you can't have. So it's a problem for the NCAA to go back and make any rules regulating any of this, especially when, like an Oscar situation, you have millions of dollars at stake. So the reason it's different is the Tennessee guy did not plead the Sherman Act, and the court makes that very clear in the first or second paragraph. If you read this Blythe decision, that judge's opinion is, oh, this is just wrong. This is wrong, which is echoing. And what Kavanaugh said was, there should be future challenges to these rules. We think this is an antitrust violation, not a ruling that it is, and not a prospective ruling, because a federal court can only rule on matters that are in front of it. But this is a justice signaling these don't have a long-term impact.
All right, the Chambliss decision, of which I am not an expert, because he's not that I would be an expert if it was in Purdue's court, but another high-profile eligibility, and he's coming back. Tell us a little bit what you know about that, but also how that relates to Pavia, or does it at all? Because he didn't play junior college football, right? Before he went to Ole Miss, or how does he get another year of eligibility?
I'm not as familiar with the Chambliss case, and I can't say why that one got the ruling. But as I recall, I think he got that from the NCAA.
Right.
So you have two different paths to go. So if you're a player, Oscar, you have to first go to the NCAA and say, please let me play again. And then they have to say no. It's called exhaustion of administrative remedies. So Chambliss's case should be confidential. The NCAA, so I don't know what the reasons were.
Yeah.
In many cases like this, there is an element of what's called a hardship. So you create a picture, and I'm not saying it's not true, where Chambliss has encountered impossible situations, perhaps family sickness. Those things can add up, and the NCAA can say, we let you play. So ideally it shouldn't matter whether you're good or you're bad. It shouldn't be like, well, this guy's really good and we can't let him play again, or she's really, really good, so we can't give Caitlin Clark another year. It's got to be some kind of rational basis.
Rational. What a term.
Well, it's for a Sherman Act violation, it's called the rule of reason. Is there a rational reason for the rule? And the NCAA's come up with their rational reasons, which candidly I find surprising. But now the argument is, we need to protect the world for the high school kids. We need to preserve this for the little guys out there. Number one, they don't represent them, so I'm not sure why they're suddenly seeking them out. But the other thing is, and this is even more important, is a concept called parens patriae. So what that means is you're acting like the government. So they're saying we need to take care of high school students. Well, that's sort of that's a jerk governmental thing. That's what the government does. That's what the legislatures are for. That's what they do. They protect people. They've got discrimination laws. They pass these things, and depending on what state you're in, you may get a law in Illinois that you don't get in Indiana, but that's democracy.
Yeah.
Illinois votes for it, Indiana votes for it. It's different. They don't have that credibility. Why?
Yeah.
They're not elected. These are
Yeah.
self-appointed officials declaring they know what's best for the world. And generally, that hasn't worked out historically for the past 2,000 years. It
Yeah.
generally doesn't work. You can't just do that.
Yeah.
In the NCAA cases I've always had, when I finally get one of these guys in the depositions, I say, where are the students? Where's the students' voice at the NCAA meetings? Where do you hear from? Since they're generating all the money, do they have a commit? Do they have a vote? Oh,
Yeah.
no, they don't get to vote. We just regulate them. That's what we regulate these guys. So, yeah, taxation without representation hadn't worked out very well.
Yeah.
And it's probably destined not to work out. That's why you're hearing these calls for Congress. Congress come in and do. Well, the reality of it is somebody like Congress needs to do what they're doing, which means they can't be doing what they're pretending to be Congress, and they're not.
Yeah. And and I know these your opinions are your own, and you can lay that caveat out there, but is it ultimately though still, I mean, how does this get resolved from eligibility to not name, image, and likeness, rev share, all those factors? You can't necessarily lop them all together. I understand they're all separate issues, but people like our readers, our fans, the Purdue people all around the country said, the term guardrails comes up all the time. And correct. How do we get this so that we have an ability to have a competitive environment, a consistent competitive environment, so we're not dealing in some of the things we're dealing with now?
I think the easiest answer is to follow the pro model. And what do I mean by that? Where we've gone to this situation in which the players had no representation and were just getting exploited, to the situation in which, quite frankly, the tables have turned. And now it seems as if the players are exploiting the schools, and the schools don't have any leverage, and they're just paying out fortunes. And why? Well, these guys have got all the authority. So what you normally do in a situation like that, and what has happened historically in the Industrial Revolution, is you create a union. It used to be people got paid $1 a day to work in the coal mine, and they died there, and it was horrible stories. And then you flipped over to the other side. So what's happened is you need to have two equal forces, like a school district and a teachers union. Well, they get together and they hammer it out. Now, you can have all kinds of complaints. I know in the NFLPA, there's tons of criticisms, and I personally would agree with them, that the NFLPA hasn't done a great job for its players, given the amount of money they're generating and the physical risk they're at. But that's for another day. In any event, you have two you put two heavyweights in the ring. You don't put the heavyweight wrestler at West Lafayette against the lightweight wrestler at Central Catholic. It's like, no, that's, everybody knows that's not fair. So no, you put the two heavyweights in there. You put John Rowe in there against David Schrader, and that's how you do that. So and then it's a fair fight. So what you do is you put them on level playing field. You have a union, and then you have a bargaining representative for the schools, and then they form a contract. Then you have a contract. Right now, the contract's just between the people on one side. It's just between the owners of the NFL, and it doesn't have anything to do with the players. Well, that didn't work, and that's not right. You got to have it between the players, and then you can have salary caps, limitations, and ideally, the NFL's gotten it the best. You give everybody the same tools, and you say, go out and make the best mousetrap. Yeah. And you know what? Some people are going to be really good at it, and some people aren't. Some people are going to get Tom Brady, and some people aren't. But there's going to be this decision making, and you're again, the two heavyweights going against each other. What do you have? You have parity. You have a situation in which there's a rotation of great talent. Why? Because everybody's equal. with regard to revenue sharing, that is already starting to occur. It's occurring in the ACC. And there's clamoring, as you've heard, no doubt,
Yeah.
from Ohio State and Michigan. From an NCAA perspective, approximately 83% of all the media is generated by football. So football's the Lion King. And 25 years ago, it might have been different. I don't know. But now it's football.
Yeah.
And so that's the driving force. And so you have a situation in which the big guys want to take more money. And the way you can do that is almost on a meritocracy basis. So instead of just saying, well, Michigan, Ohio State, and this troubles me to say, but Indiana, should get the lion's share. What you do is you do it on a performance basis, and you say, okay, look, if you get it to the playoffs, and you do it year over year, and you adjust based on performance, and then secondarily based on media eyes. Why? Well, it's the same reason the quarterback makes more money than most linemen on the NFL teams. Why? The people pay to see the quarterback. The quarterback's the one that draws the most eyes and brings in the most money and gets paid the most generally and has the most impact. So generally you assess it and you say, well, is your product working? Are people watching Purdue football? Are people tuning in to see the games? And the SEC has got the lion's share of that. In the Southeast, it's even different within Florida.
Yeah.
They're more rabid in northern Florida than they are in southern Florida.
Right.
But that band, the Southeast, is very rabid. So when you look at the highest watched teams, in the top 10, I think 7 of them, maybe at least 6, are from the SEC. And then, Notre Dame creeps in there, and then Ohio State, maybe Michigan, but it's mainly them. So you have a situation in which it's kind of a performance metric with maybe some guardrails.
Yeah. How do we get to that, though? I mean, at the end of the day, how is it? And this is a situation where it appears that the NCAA, for example, is not real keen on the collective bargaining world. Maybe that's the wrong characterization, but I think from a college sports world needs to get to this and get to this quickly. How do you view that, and why is there pushback for it? And you hear things like, well, we don't, if we have collective bargaining or we make them employees, we can't afford to pay, smaller schools aren't going to be able to afford to pay Social Security and benefits and all these kinds of things. What's your take on all that?
In answer to your first question, why does the NCAA oppose it? Well, because it means obsolescence for them. Yeah. It means they're making buggy whips and they're out of business.
Yeah.
Why? Because the collective bargaining agreement will have all these rules in there, just like the NFL. How many hours you can spend there, how much you get paid, how much you can practice, when the season starts, when the season ends, how much the guys on the taxi squad get. It covers everything, so you don't need the NCAA rule book, which means you don't need an office in Indianapolis. Does that's bad. Yeah. If you're working in the NCAA, bad. Hate it, bad. So how do you get there? Not everybody can afford it. That is a very true statement.
Yeah.
Historically, what has happened? If you go to Princeton's home football field and you look up, it has more national championships than Michigan and Notre Dame combined. Yeah. Why? Because from 1890 to 1930, the Ivy League dominated the sport. So what did they do? Like the University of Chicago, they decided to opt out. They opt out of the money world, and they concluded, and probably properly, that this sports thing was eating up the institution and devouring their mission. And so what they did is they just said, we're out, we're done. We're off the rat race, and we're going to play our little thing. We're not going to have scholarships. Kids are going to come here. We're going to do it the way it was in 1925 and just keep it that way. That can still be done. You can just take yourself out of the rat race. Now, so what naturally will happen will be economies, everything, capitalism in a capitalistic society, you're going to have division. So what you could do is you could have Division threes, no scholarships. Division twos, partial scholarships, no NIL. Division one, the full Monty. And
Yeah.
maybe when you get to the full Monty, there's not as 120 teams in there anymore. Maybe there's only 65 or 70. So yes, the schools have to organize themselves. They can't just say, I'm helpless and Congress, please rescue me. I mean, I don't know if anybody's watching, but Congress can't even keep the government open. I don't think they're going to be able to devote the time and legislation to do this. So the schools need to step up. And yes, what it may end up is a super league. The schools that just want to go all in, they want to make it everything. They want to put the money in, they want to play for the national championship. And the other ones just want to be able to have a homecoming, have the alumni come in, maybe win the Division II title, something a lot less scaled down. So the natural progression would be you would see sort of a conglomeration of the top 50, 60 teams. And really, it's just the top 50 or 60 schools that are willing to spend that kind of money. So that's where you get to the Super League, which would make ultimate sense. But then they take over. You don't leave it to the vote of 462 members. The reason the NFL works well, because one person owns one vote for each institution in the NFL. And right now the Seahawks are in a problem because they're held in the trust, but they want to be able to pick up the phone and say, what's your answer?
Yeah.
What's your answer? Now, and the colleges, as you probably know, have been the masters of disaggregation forever. Even each school, and I've represented several of them, is their own universe with a different power structure. In some, the athletic director has it. In some, the football coach does.
Right.
In some, the president does. In some, it's vested with the board of trustees. And in some, the general counsel is. So you've got 5 potential sources of power at a school, and some of them are political, believe it or not. I know it's hurtful to understand, but it is. So it's difficult to maneuver, and it leads to inertia. And that's what's gotten us into the place we're in, is inertia. It's like, well, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Why don't we just kick the can down the road another year and see how it goes? Well, I'm with you. I think the time has passed for that. They need action. They need real action. And the answer is, look at the NFL. There's so much money out there that can be made, and can be made in a realistic manner.
We'll be back in a couple minutes for our next segment with Pete Rush. So stay tuned. See you in a couple minutes on Gold and Black Live.